Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're looking at something pretty interesting, I think. This is the 2021 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. This is my very first time driving this car, so it's been a learning experience. So in that way, I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a quick drive, and then I'm going to tell you what I really think. Okay, my friends, let's talk about styling really quick because there's some important things to point out here on this car. It's pretty controversial styling. I'll get that right out front. I've heard a lot of people talk about this car and say it looks horrid, and I've had other people say they really like the way this thing looks. And I have to tell you, I was a little bit mixed at first, but the more I look at this, I'm really starting to appreciate it. It does look a little bit like a fish, but in all seriousness, so let's get beyond that subjectiveness and talk about what this is here. 2021 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid Limited, which means we're fully loaded. And a couple things I want to point out here that are rather fascinating. Let's look at these headlights. You see this chrome strip that comes all the way down the side of the car in a very 1940s, 1950s like way. It dives into these headlights, but when you fire the car up and turn it on, part of that chrome strip lights up and becomes part of the headlight. It lights up with your LED daytime running light, nice signature light, and when the headlights come on, the LED headlights, the whole thing really looks rather nice together and sort of amplifies that fish look at night, the catfish with its, okay. That said, unique front grille and fascia for the hybrid, completely different than you're going to find on the other Hyundai Sonatas. And as we get around the corner, these are aero wheels, 17-inch aero wheels. So they're not the largest tire and wheel combination you're going to find on some of the other Hyundai Sonatas, but it is a unique wheel and tire that you're going to find on the hybrid. With that and a lot of other changes that they've made here, this is a very aerodynamic car, a 0.24 drag coefficient. So if you're following numbers like that, that's pretty good. You're up there in Tesla territory when it comes to aerodynamics. Coming down the back and looking at it from this angle, a few things I want to show you. First of all, up here on the roof, this actually has something pretty unique in the car world. It is a solar panel roof. Not a sunroof. It looks like one of the panoramic sunroofs you see a lot on cars, but if you look closely, those are solar panels, and what those do is charge up the hybrid battery, and they actually give this car an extra 2 miles of electric range during the course of your driving day if you've got it parked out in the sun. It also helps keep all of the other components that are in the car from draining the battery while it's parked, things like your computer, your audio system, things like that. Looking at the rear taillights, this is a pretty unique feature as well. That has a continuous LED bar that spans the entire length with the taillights at night. It looks very cool, very bright. And to the aerodynamics of this car, some interesting little strakes right here on the tops of the taillights. A lot of those little things, again, they seem innocuous, but they actually help to smooth the airflow over the car. Also at the bottom is a unique rear fascia to the hybrid model, and as you'd expect, the hybrid logo on the deck lid. The interior of this new Sonata is actually a much more imaginative place to look at than the last generation Sonata, I'm glad to say, because the last generation Sonata was getting to be pretty plain and, well, I don't want to say mediocre, but it didn't have very much design appeal. Let's just put it that way. Here, it's at least got some things going on that have some visual interest, and it has a little bit more of a feeling of a little bit more luxury, a little bit more of a higher end appeal in terms of its trims, in terms of the materials, and just the overall look of things. As I sit here in my Limited, I do have leather seats. These are heated and cooled up front, and of course they're power adjustable. They're very comfortable. The layout of this cockpit is actually pretty nice. I've got everything within reach, although the touchscreen is a bit of a distance here for my arms. The visibility is very good. I like the fact that I can see some of the hood out in front. That's something that's sort of coming back in car design, and it just gives you a better idea of where your perimeter is. In front of me is a 12.3-inch completely digital display, and it's customizable as most are. It changes with the drive mode, different colors, different layouts are available to you. I like to always have my MPG in front of me. It's got paddle shifters to go with the automatic transmission, and It is worth pointing out that on the center console is a push button controller. Not necessarily my favorite. I usually prefer to have a lever, but this does work pretty well. When you press the button and put it in gear, it gets there right away. There's not much of a delay. The center stack is very nicely laid out. It starts with the information screen up at the top with the touch screen and touch sensitive controls on either side, a volume knob. This one has climate control. The center console cubby down in the middle has the Qi wireless charger for your phone. The cool thing about it is this one has a cooling fan. Why you see the little vents there. The drive mode selector is right here next to the cup holders. Storage is actually pretty good in here. There's enough room for a number of water bottles. As an example, I've got my phone and a number of other things in there at the moment since I'm filming, but plenty of space in there, nothing to complain about. The infotainment system has a 10.25-inch widescreen format, getting to be very popular in cars, the widescreen. It's got a lot of visibility. It allows you to customize it into different panels, or in the case of mine, I've got a map, which I always like to have, but you can set your radio up and have your presets, as well as any number of other things. The voice control on it works very well. I was able to pick an address out and get directions to it the first time, just calling out the address. So I didn't have to teach it how to listen to my voice. The sound is very good. This happens to have Bose audio. I like the fact that it has a manual volume knob. No tuning knob, but half measure at least, better than nothing at all. Of course, you do have controls also on the steering wheel. Being a pretty large sedan, this has plenty of space for your back seat passengers. I'm about 5'8" with my tennis shoes on, and these seats are set for my height, so as you can see, I've got plenty of leg room back here. And the seating height is actually pretty good for a car. My knees aren't perched way up, I'm not sitting down in a hole, and yet I still have about 3 inches of headroom over the top of my head up here. It's a pretty comfortable seat. It's pretty firm like Hyundai seats are. The center hump is a little bit elevated, so shorter people are going to want to sit in the center if you've got 3 across. This has a nice little sunscreen feature in the back on both sides, although not on the back window. Usually those go together, but in this case you do at least have that. One of the things that's significantly different on this Hyundai Sonata Hybrid as opposed to the last generation is that the battery is located under the seat. That location gives us a number of benefits. First of all, we have a pass-through. 60/40 split fold-down rear seat gives you a pass-through into the trunk for longer items, but more importantly, that battery is not sitting back in the lower trunk area, which now allows a spare tire. And it's a big spare tire well, so if you live in snow country and you need to have a real full-size spare, you've got the room back there to do that. The question I always like to ask is, how does it go? Woo! Cruising Central. And I'm speeding down Central way faster than I should be. I'm not even going to tell you how fast that is. So that's plenty of power, obviously. It's definitely worthy of a speeding ticket. So what does this have under the hood? It's a 2-liter gasoline engine and a 51 horsepower electric motor. Now this has a very unique system because it's not the traditional ECVT that most hybrids have. It's a traditional 6-speed automatic transmission that has an electric motor sandwiched in between it and the gasoline engine. And so what that gives you is a 192 horsepower combined system, but more important than that, it gives you a traditional driving experience where most hybrids have a very vacuum cleaner like driving experience. This has a feel like most everyday cars that you'd find that are not hybrids. It has shifting. I actually have paddle shifter here that enable me to upshift and downshift and give me that fun sporting driving experience, especially on sport mode. And here we go again. They're not working, of course, because I'm trying to do it in front of the camera. But that's the lesson in this, folks. Shift paddles are toys. They don't really do a damn thing. So efficiency is actually very good. This is rated at 45 mpg city, 51 highway, and 47 combined. And in my week with it, I actually got 48. And that's including, well, a little bit of playing around with it here and there. So I'm very impressed with this. And one other little detail that this has, before I get on to handling and how it rides, is the fact that this has what's called active shift control. Kind of a Hyundai interesting little quirk that it has. It speeds up shifts by up to 30%, so that helps the car feel sportier, but it also makes it more efficient. Really, the takeaway there is that this is a hybrid car that drives more like a traditional non-hybrid car than any other hybrid I've driven. When it comes to ride and drive and overall handling, one of the first things I always love to test, especially here in the city, is the speed hump test. You know, the speed humps that slow you down in your neighborhood. These things are ever present here in Phoenix, and I found them to be a great way to see how well the suspension is put together and how solid the car is, because if it just hops over them without any drama like this, pretty good. We're at speed limit 25 miles per hour, and that's always the speed that I do this at. And in this car, I find that it does pretty well. Some cars, it feels like the suspension is going to thunk and break, and it makes a lot of noise. But this car, it does pretty well on those speed humps, a lot better than most. So as I'm driving around town, one of the big things I've noticed about this car this week is the fact that it actually has a pretty stiff ride, and that surprises me in what might be considered a large luxury sedan. And it just has a very stiffly sprung suspension and stiff shocks. Now, that's good for handling, obviously. If you turn corners and go on a windy mountain road, this is going to give you a more sporting feel, something I honestly didn't expect in the Hyundai Sonata. But note that the price to pay for that around town over bumps and speed humps, things like that, is a bit rougher ride. Overall, though, around town, in spite of the fact that it does have a firmer ride, and that's something that you're just going to have to go test drive the car and decide for yourself if it's to your liking, I find that the car is actually very quiet and has a nice mellow demeanor, especially on the highway. But before we finish up on the test drive, one other thing I do want to show you is this very cool feature that's very similar to the Honda Lane Watch, and that is a feature that when you turn on the traffic signal, either left or right, it shows you the image of what's in the lane next to you right on the instrument cluster. That is pretty cool. All right, my friends, let's wrap it up for the 2021 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. I have to say I'm more impressed than I thought I'd be. When I'm told I'm getting a hybrid sedan, yawn, you know, I mean, how exciting can that be? But the reality is this car impressed me in a lot of ways, and the first thing it did was really show me that it's pretty unique, and that goes to the styling. We talked about that up front here, and things like the solar panel roof. It really stands out in ways that other cars kind of just gloss over. They just put together a nice shape and a few things, but this car sort of marches to its own drummer in its styling and a lot of the features that it offers. It's unique. Also, it's efficient. Duh, right? It's a hybrid sedan, of course it's going to be efficient, but its EPA ratings are very good, as we talked about, but it actually achieved 48 miles to the gallon during my week with it. I was at 50 quite a bit, but then I started driving fast with those paddle shifters and enjoying the power a little bit, and got a little crazy, I have to admit, but 48 miles to the gallon as an average, it's very good for a big car like this. This is, for all intents and purposes, a full-size sedan by today's measure, so I'm impressed with that. Also, it's got a lot of value. Now, we expect that from Hyundai. That's really what they're about. But $36,000 fully loaded for the Limited with everything on it virtually. You've got all the infotainment features inside, the leather seats and solar panel roof. All of these things really make a good value for that price, because you can spend a lot more if you go to Camry or Accord and really fully load those hybrids up. You can spend more money there. So I'm impressed with those three aspects of this car, and that's well, that's what I really think for the Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. If you like the video you just saw, click right there, see my latest one, or better yet, click down there and see all of my videos by subscribing. Either way, stay tuned.